Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ. Hey there, welcome to another MemoPod. Great to have you aboard with us. I am your host, Peter Heck. Look, I get that there's money to be made. I'm just going to dive right into this week. I believe it's time to stop the normalization of racism, because that's what we've done. We have, number one, in our culture, we've allowed the term to become rendered utterly meaningless in many contexts. We have applied the term racism to things that are not racist at all. We have used the term simply as a pejorative to attack folks that we don't like. And have I done that? I don't think so, but it's possible. It's possible that I've even done that. Typically, you don't see it coming from the right accusing the left. But in recent years, I think maybe I have been guilty of this, because it's been okay, so you want to call us racist? Well, then I will take this situation and use it and play by your own rules and accuse you of racism. And so in that sense, I've kind of participated in the rendering meaningless a term that actually has meaning. A term that from a biblical perspective is a very serious charge. And one of the things that I've always thought about racism, like actual racism, is not just that it shows a contempt towards the human spirit, not just that it shows a hatred that is out of control, that is certainly born of demons and from the pit of hell and all of that, but it's really dumb. I mean, racism is really dumb. Now, is it dumb from an ungodly perspective? Maybe not. Maybe not. Like if I was a believer that all we are just higher evolved animals, if I began with the presupposition that all living things came from the same common ancestor, that there was, this living ball of goo that washed up on a shore and slowly over billions of years branched out and took on all of these different forms. If I bought into that there was nothing special about human beings, that we did not hold something in ourselves that separated us from the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom and all of that. If I was a Darwinist through and through, then I would be tempted to believe that it was logical that the same rules that applied to animals, why wouldn't it apply to humans? And what do I mean, the rules that apply to animals? Well, Hitler found a home in this. A lot of virulent racists have found a home in this. That if you have a branch, if this is the branch right here, this is the main branch of the tree, and then it splinters off into these, and this is like the animal kingdom and stuff, and this branch right here is the branch of dogs. Well, you've got some dogs that are further evolved, natural selection, than other dogs, and what do they do with the lesser dogs? They kill them off. That's why you don't have all of these intermediate phases back here. It's why we don't find them. Psst, by the way, we don't find them in the fossil record either, which kind of renders this entire theory null and void. By the way, that was Darwin that said that. He said the imperfection of the geologic record is why we don't find transitional fossil links. In other words, it's the 1850s and 60s, and we're not very good at digging in rocks, but one day we will be, and when we are, we'll find all kinds of transitional links. We're pretty good, and we haven't found them. So according to Darwin, the whole theory is shot to smithereens. But let's just skip that for now. all of these transitional phases, they've died off because the further advanced species has killed them off. Well, wouldn't that be true of this branch also? If it's true of this branch and this branch and this branch and that branch, wouldn't it be true of this one? This one happens to be the branch of human beings, that some human beings are further evolved than others. You start to see why Darwin called his book that we all quote and we all talk about, On the Origin of Species and Natural Selection and the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Well, Peter, they're not talking about races of humans. He's talking about like the races in the animal. No. We're all animals. According to Darwinian theory, we're all animals. It's exactly why Darwin will write a follow-up book called The Descent of Man, talking about the branch of humans, in which he will argue that Australian Aborigines and dark-skinned Africans are closer to chimpanzees than Caucasians. Darwin was a virulent racist. It was born in his ideology, and then we mindlessly teach it to all of our children and then wonder, well, why do we have a racism problem? I mean, you're ingraining it. Now, do I think that people think at a presuppositional level? No, I do not. I don't. And I think that the more serious thinkers will try to skip over and ignore that part of what Darwinism would actually lead them to believe. They just skip over that and recognize that as an inconsistency in their worldview, and they just don't talk about it. And they rely on the fact that nobody else talks about it. And people like me that do talk about it, well, we don't have a platform that we can actually influence the general population to realize, I don't know that this is such a solid basis upon which to build our theories and our society. Nonetheless, let me get back to what I was saying. If I was of the ungodly belief that all human beings were just higher evolved animals, then I would be more apt to believe, or at least to accept, the idea that some races are further evolved than other races. But I am not a believer in crackpot theories. I am not one who plugs my ears and covers my eyes and refuses to see that which is right in front of my face, that we live in a universe of immaculate design that could not have come together purely by chance, even if you give it a quadrillion years. And I know that the Darwinists keep extending the timeline, which is their biggest problem in their theory, that these elaborate, long ages that simply don't make sense. According to everything that we see and everything we see, it takes 15,000 years for human beings to get from writing on cave walls to paper. 15,000 years? I mean, and I've said this before, we went from horse and buggy to standing on the surface of the moon in like 60. 15,000 years to get from cave drawings to paper? But anyway, these extensive, I don't care how many years you give it, it's not going to happen by chance. It's a mathematical impossibility. So I don't subscribe to the crackpot theories. But because I don't, and because I believe that this was intentionally designed, this universe, because I believe in the authority of God's word, because I believe that all of the human race came from the original adult human pair, that means Adam and Eve and the earliest generations had within them all of the necessary genetic information for all of the various races that we see around us. Which means racism is really stupid, because we're all one race. We're all Adam's race. Now, does that mean that we don't acknowledge the distinct characteristics of cultural and ethnic background? That's not at all the case. The Bible makes mentions of those, that there will be races and kingdoms in heaven. Yeah, I think it's, again, an incredible testament to the genius of God and skin pigmentation and how all of that works. What I'm saying is it's an incredibly lazy and stupid reason to hold as the basis of disliking somebody. You're going to not like somebody because they have a higher amount of melanin in their skin? That doesn't make any sense. There are so many, please be careful how you interpret this, there are so many good reasons to dislike people. I mean, there are. The amount of melanin in somebody's skin seems extraordinarily lazy. But this is where I was starting. I understand there's money to be made. I get it. I understand that we are living in a godless society, and whenever belief in a cosmic, a transcendent moral authority that is outside of us, beyond us, once that disappears from a civilization, anything goes. It may be a while before people realize that anything goes. Think of the playground in elementary school. Once you remove the moral authority, once you remove the playground monitor, everything may go on as it had for a while, and then people are going to start realizing there's no playground monitor, and they're going to do whatever they want. Anything goes. And when people are faithless, there is great grift to be found in pseudo-religions of man. And beyond just that, I understand the allure of neo-Marxist power dynamics. That's the best way that I could phrase it. Philosophical approaches that leverage perpetual victimhood. If I can make you believe I'm a victim and I'm deserving of things, there's a lot that I can profit. And you couple that with political strategies, so you have the perpetual victimhood, and then you marry that with political strategies like community organizing, which is better called community agitating. And you are in a prime position to deliver the twin pursuits of power and prosperity. And that's what we want. That's what mankind wants. You don't believe me? Ask Barack Obama. This country once had comparatively extraordinarily healthy, steadily improving race relations. Look at the statistics for how many people, black and white, believe that race relations in America were strong before Barack Obama goes into office. And then look at that number when he leaves office. Obama used all of that stuff, the political strategy of community organizing and agitating, perpetual victimhood, he used all of that to his own advantage. He secured the presidency of the United States, even at the cost of his country's positive race relations. Ask Ibram X. Kendi. At the cost of real scholarship, at the cost of actual ethnic studies and ethnic appreciation, Kendi has exploited differences and distinctions to do what? To enrich himself. He's become a sought-after, even if he's clueless, speaker and lecturer on race. There's great grift to be found. Nicole Hannah-Jones, that's another one. At the cost of journalistic integrity, Jones has plagiarized, she's bastardized history to catapult herself onto the pages of New York Times. What has happened is that they have professionalized race baiting in this country, and the red meat that is offered up by America's imperfect past, the fact that we had slavery at one point in time, it's provided the necessary ingredients for these charlatans, whether it's Obama or it's Kendi or it's Nicole Hannah-Jones, to cook up this noxious stew of cultural discontent and social discord. They've seized upon it, but it's all become so backwards. It's become so bereft of anything remotely resembling logical consistency that this motley mob of activists and militants and cons, that's what they are, they descend regularly upon our airwaves to peddle degeneracy, to peddle conflict, all for their own profit. For instance, I'm going to show you a clip here, or let you listen to a clip here if you're listening to the MemoPod. This is from MSNBC's Morning Joe program. You explain to me, number one, I want you to see if you even pick up on the vile racism that is on display here. Or are we so conditioned we don't even pick up on it anymore? I want you to watch this if you're watching. I want you to listen to this if you're listening to the pod. And you tell me if you don't hear vile racism in what's being said. Go ahead. Here we go.
Joining us now, Professor of Political Science at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Tom Schaller, and journalist and opinion writer Paul Waldman. Their new book, out tomorrow, is entitled White rural rage, the threat to American democracy. And Tom, we'll start with you. Why are white rural voters a threat to democracy at this point? You would think, as we pointed out, looking at Joe Biden's background and Donald Trump's, that the opposite would be true.
I mean, we lay out the fourfold interconnected threat that white rural voters pose to the country. First of all, and we show 30 polls and national studies to demonstrate this, so we provide the receipts in Chapter 6. They're the most racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, and anti-gay geodemographic group in the country. Second, they're the most conspiracist group. QAnon support and subscribers, election denialism, COVID denialism and scientific skepticism, Obama birtherism. Third, anti-democratic sentiments. They don't believe in an independent press, free speech. They're most likely to say the president should be able to act unilaterally without any checks from Congress or the courts or the bureaucracy. They're also the most strongly white nationalist and white Christian nationalists. And fourth, they are most likely to excuse or justify violence as an acceptable alternative to peaceful public discourse.
So you mentioned a lot of negative factors about this demographic.
I mean, that's unbelievable to me. And the fact that no one bats an eye at MSNBC. Nobody clenches their faces tightly. Oh, I can't believe they're saying that. In the production room, when they have two guests that start talking like this, that the university that employs the one guy, that they aren't cringing. How can we employ somebody like that? It's remarkable to me. The entire premise of this book, even from the title, is pure racism. What is it? It is categorizing, it's cataloging, it's classifying people purely on the basis of those people's race and location. And if you still don't see how vile that is, imagine two guys authoring a book that describes all the negative characteristics and the qualities of urban blacks. Imagine somebody going on television having written a book about all the negative qualities of the urban black person. Or imagine two guys peddling a book that rips into the horrible merits, the backward virtues of West Coast Asians. Or how about they write one on the disasters brought about by the East Coast Jews? Or better yet, given our current era, what if they wrote one about how Mexican immigrants are a threat? And maybe those books are out there. Maybe there's two guys that have written those books. Imagine a major network supporting it and promoting it. It's astounding. Now, are there people out there like you and me that get it? Yeah. And that's reassuring. It's reassuring that there are people that see the vile and the divisive racism that these two bigots, these two bigoted men that you just saw or you just heard are spouting, and they're spouting it with impunity and with the endorsement and the blessing of a huge network, MSNBC. It is extraordinarily disappointing that even though average Joes see it, that our elites and our rulers do not. And why don't they? Because the normalization of racism has happened. It's a modern creation of progressivism, and it may seem like a good idea to the people who profit from it. But I'll tell you what it's done and what it's doing. It is unleashing a torrent of ill will, of rancor and acrimony that will eventually reach a boiling point. And I'll be honest with you, when I watch clips like that, it's becoming harder and harder to believe that that boiling point is not exactly the outcome that our elites and our rulers desire. Be interested in your thoughts. Peter@peterheck.com. That is Peter@peterheck.com. I would love to hear from you. Now, for those of you who are paid subscribers, I want you to stick around, because in the second half of the MemoPod this week, I want to talk about being ruled by fools, because that's where we are. I'm trying not to be bitter about the Republicans choosing to subject us to a rematch of Biden and Trump, even though I still don't think it's going to be Biden. I'm trying not to be bitter that Republicans had an opportunity to nominate. I'm trying. I am. But I still need to say a few things and I need to feel you out on this. William F. Buckley had a famous quote, and that famous quote seems to be, on the surface, it seems to be hyperbole, but I don't think it is. I think that this joke is not a joke. It's the reality that we are all living, and we need to talk about it. Now, I would love to have all of you free subscribers join in on that conversation, hear the quote, give me your thoughts on whether or not we are ruled by fools and what can actually be done about it at this point in time. I would love to have that conversation with you, and I'd love it if you give us a shot to join our community that has these conversations and discussions. As Christians, how do we respond to a culture that is ruled by fools? I'd love to have you on board. Why don't you give us a shot? Just upgrade to paid. You can do it and get the cheap discount for the full year, just $100, or you can do the $10 a month and cancel anytime. I just think it might be worth your time. I know you're filling your head with a lot of other stuff. Why not this stuff? Just a thought. But would love to keep you as a free subscriber if you're not interested in that. I'll see you next week. For those of you who are paid, see you in just a couple.
The Memo with Peter Heck.
Please patronize and thank all the sponsors of the Heck podcast, including McGonagall's Buick GMC, Terrell's Auto Service, Norris Insurance, Stevens Machine, Creative Financial Center, Indiana Right to Life, Tri-Green Tractor, the Indiana Family Institute, Hartman Family Farms, Liberty Financial Group, the Wyman Group, and J. Watson Creations.